Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. We begin in Winnipeg tonight, where the firefighters involved in an incident last fall are reportedly on administrative leave. On Thursday, we brought you the story about two Winnipeg firefighters who refused to treat an Indigenous patient. Today, Mayor Brian Bowman called on the union that represents the firefighters to speak out against their actions. With more, here's Daryl Stranger.
According to the report, in October 2020, firefighters and paramedics arrived to treat a 23-year-old woman who had stabbed herself in the neck. One paramedic treated the woman, but two firefighters refused to help the paramedic. That paramedic filed a complaint about the firefighters' conduct. Now, Mayor Brian Bowman called upon the president of the United Firefighters of Winnipeg, Alex Forrest, to speak out regarding this issue. In a press conference, Bowman says he wants to see the president of the UFFW speak out publicly against the actions of the firefighters.
My call to the president of UFFW really was to urge him to publicly acknowledge that systemic racism exists within the Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Service and UFFW in particular, and also to publicly identify what measures his union has taken to date to combat systemic racism within the union.
In a written statement to APTN, President of the UFFW, Alex Forrest, said he would not be making any public statements until these issues are resolved. Forrest says the UFFW members in question have been tried and convicted before the full facts were dealt with. Unlike the mayor, we will respond at the appropriate time in a professional manner so that it does not prejudice the ability of our members to defend themselves from these accusations. On the community streets, some are outraged by the findings of this report. Mitch Bourbonniere is a community outreach worker and walks the streets of Winnipeg every day. He was sickened by the report when he first heard it.
It's kind of a mix of just tired and discouraged and sickened, by it. And it's like on one hand, people are saying, yeah, well, this is what we have faced forever, and on the other hand, it's such a blatant example of both bias, but actually overt racism that people are really angry at this one.
Bourbonniere added he wasn't sure if training is enough to stop something like this from happening again.
I don't know if education and training will even work with some of these people. I had kind of a fantasy of I want to know who these people are and let me have a chance to talk to them. Let the community have a chance to talk to them in circle. And maybe that's what's needed rather than just, PowerPoint training sessions.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Good point there by Mitch. Still in Winnipeg, billionaire fashion mogul Peter Nygard will be staying behind bars while he awaits trial. He's facing extradition to the U.S. for alleged sex crimes involving dozens of victims. He was denied bail this morning in a Winnipeg courtroom. APTN Investigates producer Holly Moore was there and joins us now. Holly, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us a bit more about this case?
Well, the case of Peter Nygard goes back 25 years, according to the charges that were brought in the U.S. So he is accused of sexually assaulting dozens of women over a 25-year period. He essentially is facing 9 charges in the U.S., and he was arrested here in Winnipeg, in Canada, December 14th. He surrendered himself to police and has been in custody ever since.
And so what were his lawyers arguing?
Well, his lawyers were arguing that keeping Peter Nygard, who is, of course, 79 years old, in jail during the COVID pandemic really amounted to a death sentence for him. So what they've argued is that he should be released into a home here in Winnipeg. He would have 24-hour surveillance. He would have sureties within the community, people who had offered to put up money, who would look out for him, make sure he doesn't leave. They've really said that, it's not fair because he hasn't been charged in Canada, and he is awaiting an extradition hearing, which hasn't been set yet, and Canada hasn't even decided yet if they will extradite him. So that's all up in the air, but of course the judge today decided that even though Peter Nygard may not be a flight risk, she still believes that he's better off behind bars.
Now, I understand you're following this for an APTN Investigates episode. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the APTN Investigates episode looks at the class action lawsuit, which has 57 women signed up. 30 of them are Canadian. Now, there are no Canadian charges yet, but 2 of the alleged victims were Indigenous. One is an Inuk woman, Serena Hicks, who lives here in Winnipeg, and another says that she was a 13-year-old foster child at the time that Peter Nygard paid her for sexual favors. So I'm really interested in speaking to people, Indigenous people, who have had contact with Peter Nygard and his companies, because I think it's an angle that the mainstream media hasn't really addressed, is, you know, the incredible vulnerability there of some of those victims.
Holly, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you speaking with us here about this.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
And we'd like to hear what you have to say about anything you've seen here. Here's how you can get in touch. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. After a challenging 2020, the Northwest Territories' biggest private sector, diamond mines, are receiving some good news. Dominion Diamond Mines have sold the Caddy Diamond Mine and associated assets to Arctic Canadian Diamond Company Limited. The sale comes after months of uncertainty. Operations were shut down since early March because of the pandemic and only started back up last month. Located roughly 300 kilometers north of Yellowknife, the mine is one of 3 in the NWT and employs roughly 1,800 staff. Industry experts say it's good timing as the price of diamonds is slowly returning to where it was pre-pandemic.
There's some revenues and some jobs coming back to the NWT that we'd lost over most of last year. There were people that were afraid that the mine might not even come back into production, so this is a really good sign. It's one of the largest mines, if not the largest mine, so it's a huge economic boost.
Exciting news for the Innu Nation in Quebec. They're now 50-50 partners in a $600 million development project aiming to bring wind power to the province's Côte Nord region by 2024. The project is called Puyat, and it's the first green energy project to break ground on traditional Innu territory. Construction of the wind power farm will create over 300 jobs. Quebec officials say its development will help the province's economy post-COVID-19, as well as reduce the cost of electricity. Innu community chiefs call the agreement historic.
Pour la première fois de notre histoire, nous sommes les promoteurs et les actionnaires d'un grand projet de développement économique national. C'est à notre tour, autrement dit, de vendre l'électricité au bénéfice de nos communautés.
C'est sans précédent, là. Je pense pas qu'on aurait vu ça là, il y a à peu près une quinzaine d'années, que les Inuits aient un projet d'envergure puis que les Autochtones du coin nous épaulent là-dedans.
Now to Nunavut, where community concerns over a proposed North Baffin Island mine expansion are now resulting in the mine having their airstrip and access road blocked by Inuit. Our Kent Driscoll joins us from Iqaluit. Kent, thanks for being with us. Fill us in on what's happening at Mary River.
Well, Dennis, the Mary River Iron Ore Mine, Baffinland, it's located about 160 kilometers south of Pond Inlet, Nunavut. And sometime around 10 o'clock last night, a group of hunters from Pond Inlet and Arctic Bay set their tents up on the runway and the access road to that mine in order to protest an expansion. Mary River has been trying to get regulatory approval to double production and add a railway to ship even more mine, and they've been negotiating for this since 2014.
Kent, what are some of the specific environmental concerns people there have?
Well, there's a proposed railway to ship out even more iron ore, and people fear that that's going to interfere with caribou. The iron ore dust, they say, has been contaminating seal holes, and the sounds of the ships force off narwhals. So the mine has been trying to argue back with science, but people's first-hand observations are saying different.
Ken, how are Nunavummiut receiving this protest? Are people supporting the hunters?
Oh, there are many who are supporting the hunters, but the result is all over the map. You got to remember, there are 200 families who put food on their table in Nunavut by working at that mine, and the mine spent $200 million on Inuit-owned businesses just last year. So, the response is all over the map, Dennis.
Well, Ken, I'm sure you'll have more for us in the coming days. Appreciate you bringing us up to speed here.
Quyanamik, Dennis.
Thanks, Kent. Time for a quick break. Still to come, military support is on the way for a First Nation in Manitoba.
We have approved a request for federal assistance for Pongasi First Nation in northern Manitoba. The Canadian Armed Forces will begin deployment as soon as possible.
Welcome back. Well, the provinces are slowly starting to begin their COVID-19 vaccination rollouts. It's a different story in the Yukon, where already over 23% of the adult population has been vaccinated. APTN's Sarah Connors gives us an inside look at 2 mobile vaccine clinics and also shows us what First Nations in the territory are doing to help encourage citizens to roll up their sleeves.
There you go. That's it. That's it. I'm all done.
Mariah Benoit has just finished getting her first dose of the Moderna vaccine.
No, feels okay. Yeah, didn't even feel it.
The deputy chief of Carcross Tagish First Nation is one of over 400 people at this clinic to get vaccinated.
Been waiting for a long time. We've all been waiting.
Turnout at this 2-day mobile vaccination clinic in Carcross has kept staff busy. Today is day 2, and almost 75% of the community has come here to get vaccinated.
I'm in here yesterday. We had a meeting with the minister, and so we were quite impressed to see all the people here all lined up right out the door.
Mobile vaccination clinics like this one are why the Yukon will be one of the first places in Canada to fully vaccinate most of its population. That's because the federal government is making sure small northern communities like Carcross are first in line for vaccines.
Right now, we know that those that are most vulnerable, those that are in northern communities, perhaps several hundred kilometers away from the closest reliable healthcare center, must be prioritized because if something goes wrong there, it goes really, really wrong really quickly.
It's paying off. All 3 territories say they're on track to have at least 75% of their adult populations vaccinated by April, compared to September for the rest of the country. In the Yukon, close to 10,000 people have been vaccinated, about 1/3 of the adult population.
It's worth it, yes.
Like Carcross Tagish elder Charlie James, who received his first Moderna dose yesterday.
Well, I think it's very important that we not only think about ourselves, but our grandchildren and those who we interact with.
He says there's other reasons too, like potlatches and gatherings, which haven't happened in Carcross in several months.
We had quite a few deaths in the community, and we're not able to put our loved ones away the way we want to.
Okay, I took the vaccine yesterday. I have a little bit of a sore arm, a little bit of a headache, but other than that, I'm fine.
Chief Linda Dixon also received her shot yesterday, though she admits she was hesitant at first because of how quickly the Moderna vaccine was approved.
You know, I mean, but in order to move forward with getting our lives back to a semi-normal, we have to do something.
The Yukon has 2 mobile vaccine clinic teams, Team Togo and Team Balto. Both teams are staffed with nurses and a logistics crew who travel together between rural Yukon communities, administering the vaccine typically in a 2-day clinic.
This is brand new territory for all of us.
Peter Wright is in charge of Team Balto's logistics, like coordinating travel, equipment setup, and cleaning. He says community support has been overwhelming.
My team that gets to interact with a lot of the public, they've had nothing but positive comments and feedback. It's been really incredible.
In Hanks Junction, locals light 140 candles welcoming Team Togo. As the bus arrives carrying the vaccine crew, they're greeted by many members of the small Yukon community. Overnight, crews turned the Daku Cultural Center into a vaccine clinic. Almost 400 people from Hanks Junction came out to today's clinic, like Steve Smith, chief of Champagne and Asiac First Nations.
Well, it's good. I think it's going to help. It's going to help all the small businesses, going to help families. Yukon in general has been quite good.
Deputy Mayor Angie Charlebois says Hanks Junction is vulnerable because of its proximity to Alaska.
I mean, we're on the Alaska Highway. There's a lot of traffic that comes through our community to go to Alaska.
As a way to encourage vaccinations, the First Nations have offered free transportation to citizens in need and vaccine support for those living in Whitehorse.
That we marshaled all of the resources that we have as a government. So all of our vehicles, we have, as you can see, you got a number of staff here all doing various things so that we could ensure that that goal of 100% of every Champagne Asiac citizen to be vaccinated will get vaccinated.
Despite an expected delayed shipment this month, the territory is still on track to receive its full allotment of doses by March 31st. With herd immunity a possibility in the territory and no new cases in 3 weeks, Chief Smith says vaccinations have never been more important.
It's about keeping our community safe. You know, we hope that they make the decision to get the vaccine.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Carcross and Hanks Junction.
To Ottawa now, where the Prime Minister and federal officials gave updates today on getting COVID vaccines, as well as more assistance for a Northern Manitoba First Nation. Jimmy Pashagumscum reports.
The Prime Minister says he is extending military help for another remote community.
We have approved a request for federal assistance for Pongassi First Nation in Northern Manitoba. The Canadian Armed Forces will begin deployment as soon as possible. They'll be arriving on Saturday at the latest and will be there until February 10th.
With shipments of vaccines being reduced this month, Trudeau announced a new vaccine could be in Canada's near future.
Pending Health Canada approval, we will receive at least 1.9 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine before the end of June.
At the health update, officials said we could see those doses by the end of March. Vaccinations have been rolling out relatively smoothly in Indigenous communities across the country, but Canada's Chief Medical Officer, Theresa Tam, says it's still early to lift restrictions, as vaccine effectiveness is still unknown.
One of the first pieces of data we'll be looking for, of course, is the impact on the long-term care facilities, the seniors, and see if that has any impact on hospitalizations and on deaths.
Tam continues to warn Canadians to avoid gatherings, especially this weekend.
We need to limit in-person contacts to our immediate household, and by connecting with others virtually, we can still enjoy the Super Bowl, but without the super spreader. Thank you.
Jamie Pashagumscum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
New episode of APTN Investigates airs tonight right after the news. We'll speak with reporter Lee Wilson about it after the break. Welcome back. Time now to take a look at our photo of the day. This picture today is of Kelly Anderson and Heather Saunders after a successful moose hunt up north near Gillam, Manitoba. That's a big one. Looks like some good shooting. Stay safe out there and enjoy the harvest. And we invite all of our viewers to send us your photos to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Time now to take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, +1 with showers for Halifax and St. John's. -3 in Kuujjuaq, 1 below with snow for Nain. -5 for Montreal, flurries and 7 below in Chibougamau. Flurries and -4 for Toronto, snow and 13 below in Sault Ste. Marie. -17 with snow for Thunder Bay, 25 below in Sioux Lookout. -32 with flurries for Churchill, sunny and 33 below in Pucketwagon. -23 in Winnipeg, 22 below in Dauphin. -24 under sunny skies for Regina, Swift Current, and Estevan. -27 in Meadow Lake, 35 below in Uranium City. Over in northern Alberta, sunny and 33 below in Fort Chip, -31 in Fort McMurray. 20 below with snow for Medicine Hat and Calgary, 23 below in Edmonton. +8 in Vancouver, 11 above for Victoria. -13 with flurries in Prince George, 28 below in Fort Nelson. -39 in Old Crow, -22 with snow in Whitehorse. 37 below for Yellowknife, 34 below in Norman Wells. 34 as well for Sax Harbor, -35 in Colville Lake. 37 below in Cambridge Bay, -20 in Chesterfield. -29 in Resolute, 18 below for Igloolik. Prince George RCMP are under fire for the in-custody deaths of Indigenous people in the northern BC community. Reporter Lee Wilson joins us now to talk about his upcoming APTN Investigates Death in Custody. Lee, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us about the people who have died in Prince George?
Yeah, definitely. The people whose story we're sharing would be Dale Culver. He's a 35-year-old Wet'suwet'en and Gitxsan man. He died going into custody in 2017 in Prince George by with the RCMP. Next would be Everett Patrick. He's a 42-year-old Lake Babine man who went in medical distress at the Prince George RCMP detachment, and he died days later from his injuries. And finally, in October of 2020, it would be Carrie Sakani man, 23-year-old Chad George, who was picked up by the RCMP, and he died a few days later at the Prince George Regional Correctional Center.
Lee, what are these families looking for?
First, the families are looking for answers. It's been a few years for some of them, and they don't really have answers or clarity on what happened to their loved ones. And next, they'll be looking for justice. They want to know what happened to their loved ones, and they want people to be held accountable. And last, they're using their voices to try call for change to the system.
Has the RCMP responded?
We have heard back from the RCMP, but we haven't heard too much. Right now, they're saying basically the Privacy Act restrictions limit the information that they can share.
Well, Lee, looking forward to your episode coming up tonight. Appreciate you taking some time to speak with us about it.
Thank you, Dennis.
And that episode, Death in Custody, airs in just about 2 minutes' time. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.